Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, my name is Kristina. In my videos, I talk about nursing school, a plant-based diet, and my cancer journey. In today's video in particular, I'm going to be talking to you about the fundamentals of nursing. And that's typically your first semester class, so let's get into it. Oh, and don't forget to like and subscribe. So I had to take this first semester, and let me tell you, it was a lot of work. But hopefully with these tips and tricks that I could provide you with, this could be a much easier class for you. So this is the book that we had to go off of. It was Fundamentals of Nursing by Potter Perry. And this one is the 10th edition, which I'm sure they already have a new edition out because, you know, they need that money. But in my class, we had PowerPoint slides that were provided with Evolve or Elsevier, and our teachers basically taught off those PowerPoints, and then we had to go back in our textbooks and use that as reference for things that we didn't understand. But it pretty much matched up really easily, so you could see the things from the PowerPoint to the textbook. And then from the questions on tests, they weren't questions that you would typically see on other tests, like from your other classes. They were more specific, very detailed. So I really want to emphasize that those little detailed things that you might hear, like, oh, just learn the big picture of it. Not for this class. For this class, you really need to know the little tiny details because they could definitely trip you up on some of the questions. For example, if you're talking about a temperature and if you're off by 0.2 and you have two answer choices that are very close to one another, that makes a big difference, and you need to know it like clear cut that you knew the right answer. So I definitely suggest, I highly recommend that you focus on learning the exact numbers or the exact information that's given to you. While it is very tiring and frustrating at times, there's definitely a lot of tips and tricks that I will go over with you so that it can make things a lot easier. So the first thing that I recommend is to look on Quizlet. Quizlet is a lifesaver, especially all these students who have taken this class before and have used this book. I know editions are changing and everything is updating, but it's not a dramatic change where you're not going to have similar information. Most of that information is going to be virtually the same, and if you look at Quizlets from previous students who have taken it, it's open to the public. Quizlet is free, so you don't have to worry about paying for anything, which is great. So what I did with Quizlet is people in my class, they would make their own Quizlets, and then they would post it on Quizlet and give us access to it. Some of them don't require passwords. There's Quizlets out there that say like you need a password because it's private to edit, but most of them are open to the public. So honestly, I would Google Potter Perry Fundamentals of Nursing, like chapter 1. Let's say your first test is on like 10 chapters. Look at all those and see what sort of things are listed. Some people are even nice enough and they list questions that they found. So look at those questions because who knows, maybe your teacher uses some of those questions. And another tip that I highly recommend is when you're looking inside the book, and I'll show you a picture of this as well, but if you're looking inside the book, if you look at the back of the chapters, you'll see some key points, and then you'll see review questions. And even if you don't have this particular textbook, most of the textbooks have something similar to that, so it works out great. But the key points just goes over like a general summary of what happened, and then the review questions are great because you could kind of understand like, hey, am I actually getting this or not? So it gives you a really clear indication of what you should know, and the answers are provided here. So that's really helpful as well. But basically, what I did to get a 92% in my class is I focused on really learning the material. So what I did was I would listen to lecture, and I'm someone who really needs to just listen. So in class, I had my iPad and I had like the PowerPoint slides downloaded there. And if you like paper, that's fine too. You could print them out or leave it on your laptop. Whichever way, I mean, you have so endless amounts of things you can do. It really doesn't matter because everyone has their own way of learning, my way of learning might be completely different from yours, but if this does resonate with you, then I would definitely try it out. It doesn't hurt. So like I said, I would have the PowerPoints on my iPad, and then I had like an Apple Pencil, and I would just write in any little notes that my teacher added to that. Because if you look at PowerPoint slides, typically it's like a slide and then they'll have some notes at the bottom, or some teachers don't do that. But those notes at the bottom are just as important as the content that's actually listed within the PowerPoint slide itself. So I think that you should I would even copy the information from the bottom, the notes section, and paste it onto the slide so that you could have everything on one thing. So you don't have to be like, oh, I have to look at the notes too, and what if I have it on my tablet and I don't see the notes, and then you miss something and it just gets really confusing. So definitely I would take notes while you're in class, listen actively, and if you have a tablet or something like that, even your laptop, you can record the lecture as they're going over the material, which is the best thing to do, because if you miss something and you're like, oh, well, I zoned out for a minute, and trust me, that will happen. You zone out for a minute, or you just didn't hear what she said, or she's going over test questions that you could possibly have. You're gonna want that recorded, because that will help you so much in the future. And some people will even like listen to it before they go to bed, because they say when you listen to things before bed, it taps into your subconscious mind and it kind of stays there. So when you're looking at a question and you're like, I didn't really study that, but somehow I know the answer. That's the reason why. It's because our brains are so powerful in the way they sort information and store information, and it's really, really awesome. So I would definitely do that. But going back to the tablet, so just have all the information on your slides or your tablet, or have it printed out, take notes, listen, record your teacher, and you could either listen to the lecture later that week, or you could listen to it that night. Just at some point you should listen to it. Even if you're driving somewhere and you listen to it for like 5 minutes, it really does help, because something that she says or he says will just stick with you. And then when you're answering questions on tests, you'll be like, oh, I know that answer, and it would have been like something that you could have lost 2 points over. So it really does help to do that. And then after I look through all the PowerPoint slides like in class, I go home. I'll be honest with you, I don't go home that night and look at that stuff again. And a lot of people say that they do, but for me, like if I just listened to a 3-hour lecture, had a little break, and then had listened to another 2 to 3 hour lecture, do you really think that I want to sit at home again for another 3 hours listening to that lecture while taking notes and looking up stuff? No, I don't. I need some time to like unwind, relax a bit, eat something, take care of myself, hang out with my husband and daughter, and like it's just so many things going on that like you really need to take time for yourself before you can dive back into that stuff. I'm not saying don't study the same day as you learn the material, but like just give yourself some time to chill out a bit, or even listen to it the next day. So typically I would listen to it like the next day, and then I would go through my PowerPoint slides themselves with my iPad, and I would open the textbook to the chapter. So let's say she went over yesterday chapter 3. So I'd go to chapter 3, and then it would say like critical thinking and nursing practice. So I would look at each topic that relates to the PowerPoint slides, because hey, that's the material they went over in class, then that's the material that they're gonna go over in here. Look at which things match up. So if there's something on the slides that is super vague, like it says, for example, like reflection, and then it says how to critically think, and it just says like 2 bullet points, and then that's it. So you're like, oh, well, she didn't really touch into that, so she's probably not gonna ask questions. Well, maybe for some teachers they might, but my teacher didn't. She would have like a couple of bullet points, and then I'd be like, oh, okay, I don't need to know that, don't worry about that. She talked about it for 3 seconds, it's fine, I don't need to know it. And that was like test questions. So I would highly recommend is to care about each slide, pretend that all that material is going to be on it, and just treat it as like each slide might have a question from there. So you want to know each slide because typically they're worth like 2 points. I know you're not going to have like 100 question test, but maybe it's like 50 or 60. So I would just go through each little slide and find it in the chapter and look at, like, you know, what does concepts for critical thinking mean? And I would see what on the slide it touches on, and if I didn't understand it, I would look at the textbook for reference, and then there we go, I found the answer. So there was a lot of things, a lot of times where I was like, I have no idea what they're talking about on the slide, and I actually took the time to look in the textbook, and I was like, hey, that's so easy, like, why didn't I get that the first time? And a lot of times when you're looking like that, it helps so much more than reading the entire chapter. Like, you're not going to get anywhere by reading the entire chapter, and if you do, more power to you. Like, I like to read, just not a textbook. And it's not really an effective way to study, because if you're just reading word for word, like every little thing just takes up so much time, and if you're taking notes on top of it, it'll just take forever. But if that is your thing, then do it, and if it works for you, that's great. For me, it doesn't work for me. I just, like I said, I like skim read based off the topics from the PowerPoint slides, and that's how I got my 92%. So I highly recommend doing that. It really, really helps a lot. Another tip is that for those of you that have to take a Hesi exam after your first semester, and if it's based on fundamentals of nursing, like if in your nursing fundamentals of nursing class they say you have to take a Hesi exam, make sure you're reading this information like you're preparing for that exam, because a lot of times the class touches over certain things that the book will further extend into, and you need that to learn that information for the Hesi exam. And I'll make another video about the Hesi, because that's a whole other video worth that I could talk to you about tips and tricks on how to pass the Hesi, because that class is really difficult if you don't prepare, and if you don't focus on that material, then you won't do well in your Hesi. So you really have to prepare well for fundamentals, make sure you're reading those notes, try to glance at the PowerPoint slides before you get to class, because if you look at those slides ahead of time and then you see it again, it's like a review for you. And if you didn't get something when you were reviewing the slides, I'm not saying sit there for hours and look through it, just glance at it, just look at it. So it's not the first time that you're seeing it, because your brain is just learning so many things that you won't even realize. And the more you do that, the more practice you have, the easier it will get to understand the concepts that your teacher wants you to know. If your teacher is kind of one of those teachers who doesn't really tell you too much about what the test is going to be like, or doesn't give you too much guidance on how to study, then I would definitely try this method. And look at, like I said, look at the questions on Quizlet, look at all the questions in the book. There's so many resources that you have available. Even if you Google fundamentals of nursing, whatever authors you have, you could see different questions that people have posted in the past, and those I would just practice all the time. So after you master a chapter, so if you went over it, you listen to the recording if you wanted to, that's, you know, optional of course. So you went over it in class, you listened to it, the recording, and then you took your own notes on it and went back into the chapter for reference to understand things in more depth and to make things more clear, then I highly recommend looking at the questions on Quizlet and looking at the questions in the back of the book and pretend like that's your test. So it's like you have your own mini quizzes in between after each chapter, so that you could really make sure that you understand the material. And if you don't understand the material still, you're just like, okay, I did all those things and I still don't get the concepts, go to your teacher, ask for help. And if you're just like, I hate my teacher for whatever reason, or you're just like, I'm too embarrassed or something, we have YouTube. Like the same way that you're using me as a resource to watch this video about how to pass this class, use YouTube to learn the concepts of fundamentals of nursing. There is so many different amazing YouTubers out there who have these videos about the different concepts, and that's how I learned too. Like I'm a very visual learner, so like I watched countless videos on different processes, and it really helped me solidify those things, because I'll be like, oh yeah, so-and-so said this, and she said this acronym, and this that, and it just all clicked together. So I highly recommend doing that. The last thing that I recommend doing is to check on your syllabus and see what your material that is included within your grade. It could be like a project or a writing assignment or whatever it may be. Make sure to get those things done on time, and anything else that could bring up your grade after your test grades are included, make sure you get 100% on each one of them. Sometimes teachers, like in my class, she let us do these EAQs, so like it was like an easy 5% of our grade, and it's not much, but it helps bring up your grade if you're between 2 different grades. We have so many different resources, and I definitely recommend using them. If you have any questions or if you want any other videos, feel free to let me know down in the comments below. Please like this video and don't forget to subscribe. Hit the notifications button as well, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.